This session is building YAP apps with YUI. So I'm sure most of you already know what YUI is, so I'm not going to talk a lot about it today. So the majority of this talk will be introducing you to the Yahoo application platform. A few weeks ago, YAP launched support for the YUI library, and right now you can actually use YUI 2.8 to provide rich experiences built on our platform. We're still working on YUI 3 support, so I'm not going to talk a lot about YUI 3 today, because we still have some work to do with that. But what I wanted to, since many of you are new to YAP, I wanted to introduce you with creating your first application and introduce you later to some of the differences in making a YAP application and using rich JavaScript libraries like YUI with a limited, or with a, shall I say, different environment that's posed by Kaha, which I'll get into more later. So the Yahoo application platform basically allows you to build web apps that are distributed through the Yahoo homepage, My Yahoo, and soon other Yahoo destinations. So basically, this is your application that you build, existing or new. This could be something that you already have, and then you could just tune it to appear in a new container that shows up on Yahoo's network. So YAP proxies your app and acts as a distribution channel for the web application that you already have and you already support on your own server. So this app that's right behind me is Dreams Interpreter. It was actually built in 24 hours at the Yahoo Open Hack Day in New York City just a few weeks ago. So these people actually, if you saw on the last slide, they actually already had a full website with this Dream Interpreter functionality, but they decided that that would be something that they wanted to bring to the YAP platform. So you can see they did so. This is the screenshot as it looked right after Hack Day. And they kind of were able to get something public and built really quickly. And this is kind of a good example, I think, of how easy it is to create a YAP application. So you may be thinking by now, why would I even want to bother with this? What's the point? Maybe you already have a successful web application. Maybe you are, maybe you're looking to see why you want to invest time with writing an app for yet another platform. So one compelling reason is users. We have a lot of them. 330 million of them, actually, that visit the Yahoo homepage every month. These are unique users, and these are people that can use your application that you can build on the Yahoo application platform. And you can see here, these are just a few companies, a few of the companies that have already started either developing an app or have launched an app on YAP. They may focus on just My Yahoo or the Yahoo homepage. So that's kind of another thing. Some of these apps you'll see focus on My Yahoo more than, say, Yahoo.com, and YAP gives you the flexibility to use either. In particular, up here we have Mint, which is a really big YUI user. They've actually had a YAP app before we even had YUI support, and we hope that they can actually take advantage of this. Well, let's get started with creating your first YAP app, because I'm sure a lot of you are brand new to this platform. So creating a YAP app is extremely easy. You just go to the YDN website on developer.yahoo.com and click on My Projects in the top navigation bar. So here you see we actually have this new developer editing tool that shows you all the projects that you have on YDN, the Yahoo Developer Network. And I have, obviously, a lot of open applications. And to create your own, you just click on New Project, and the default option's already selected, so you just go ahead and click Continue. And you'll get to the YAP application editor. So when you get to this, you'll actually be able to easily configure your app. But before you do that, I want to go over the two views that basically, when you create an application, you have. YAP really focuses on having a view that's, if you will, that's called the small view. This kind of provides as an overview of your application, and a full view that provides JavaScript, and is kind of the job of the small view is to actually pull you into the full view. The problem with the small view, however, is that there's no JavaScript, and what you get instead is the ability to use CSS, HTML, and a language I'm going to get into pretty soon called YML to allow you to create some dynamic functionality to make your app enticing enough so that people will want to click through to the full view. So the example of what the small view looks like, the last time I showed you a YAP app, it was you saw the full view. But before you got there, you would actually see this when you hover over a YAP application on the Yahoo homepage. So the small view is also called in some places the compact view, and you'll see that terminology being used in different integrations. But it's all the same. This is the small view as you would see it on my Yahoo. And in this particular case, they don't have a lot of dynamic functionality, but they do all these links that they have here link into the full view. And you click on them, they will actually take you into the full view. The small view is the only thing that you'll see on my Yahoo. All these links that you see, this is the same app right here. AZY pairings right here. Actually, when you click on there, when you click through to the full view, it's actually hosted on apps.yahoo.com, which I'll show you in a little bit. And you can kind of see how the presentation is a little bit different. Instead of having a fixed height, you actually get a dynamic fluid height that more closely mimics the native experience that's offered by my Yahoo. So I think these applications in particular do a good job of showing what the small view is all about. For games like Lexilus that you'll see in the top corner, there isn't a lot of information or summary to display, but they do a good job of providing links that take you directly into joining the game or matching up with your friends. You'll see that Mint.com gets right to giving you an overview of your spending and provides functionality to link you into the full view and from there actually into their own web application on their own site from the full view. Gas prices by GasBuddy shows you an overview of not only the national price, but actually below, it says here the lowest prices in your area. So they actually customize the small view per user. And you'll see that same kind of customization in Mint and also in Reich Simple Projects, how it shows me an overview of recent activity on that I've accomplished in that application. The next thing that you will probably be more interested in is the full view. So the full view is proxied from your web application server, and it supports JavaScript, and by extension YUI. And you've seen that before. This is the full view that you saw before. This time it's for the same app, AZ Wine Pairings. And they kind of take advantage of the full view by this full 750 pixel width that's consistent on all our full views. And you'll notice actually here something that you may be even interested in as a developer. In the small view, you actually saw that there is a Yahoo placed an ad by the content, and here you don't see an ad at all. In the full view, you're actually allowed to put any kind of advertisement that you like. You can monetize this in any way you want. In the small view, you're not allowed to, but in the full view, you can do pretty much whatever you want with as far as making money off your application. And we actually provide through YML, which I'm about to get to, ways for you to more easily integrate ads. So when you go back to their dev tool, this is where you put your web server URL in this section right in the middle, right above where you put the small view default content. But we realize that you may not have web hosting already. And that's where our partnership with Joyent comes in. So Joyent is a leading provider of web application infrastructure as a service. And we've actually teamed up with them to provide a free Joyent accelerator for an entire year for all YAP developers. So all you need, it's instant. You go to this website right here, and in 5 minutes, after you create a YAP app, you just put in your app ID. In 5 minutes, you'll have a virtual machine. This virtual machine is fully featured. You have 5 gigs of disk space. I believe you have 100 gigs of bandwidth and 100 gigs of bandwidth, 200 megabytes of memory on this virtual machine, and all the basic command line utilities that you get with a Joyent accelerator. Even if you're just wanting to try out YAP, I would highly recommend that you take advantage of this partnership. Joyent has done this before for Facebook, and we're getting a very similar offering with Joyent. So they're experienced in doing this for social applications, and this is a great way for you to get started and get around the fact that Yahoo doesn't provide hosting for the full view. So going back to the app editor, here you can put in your brand new Joyent virtual machine. And I want to go over a concept of linking inside of your app really quickly. So when you're linking from page to page, as you saw in AZ Wine Pairings, they actually link to different recipes. And if you're going to do that, say if I was making a game and I wanted to have people fight each other, and I had a page on my web server called fight.php that handled all these different things, and I wanted to link to it. Typically, if I was going to click that in an app, it would be taken to in the full view on apps.yahoo.com. If your app ID was foo, you would actually see how this kind of works. What you put in the app, what you put actually in your application is is just this bit right there, up till fight.php. And then you can actually link inside of your app. You kind of can put, after your app ID, a relative path to other locations in your application. If you're new to that, I just wanted to go over that really quickly. What's interesting, though, that you need to keep in mind is YAP isn't always on apps@yahoo.com. If you look in your web browser, you think you could just link to different pages. And if you think you can do it this way, we don't really recommend it. It's not a good idea because if you link to it this way, and if you have an application on the Yahoo homepage, the user will actually be taken out of context of the Metro application and be transferred to a completely new site. Because we still have to support, we actually can't tell if an A-link like this is intended to be linking in between your app or if it's a completely random link to, say, your company website. So we do provide a way to do this, and it's kind of a good segue into into YML, and this is a problem that YML solves really well. So YML, it's a very simple kind of like a markup language. That allows you to provide social data and kind of some dynamic functionality really quickly and easily without using a single line of JavaScript. So part of this is so that the href that I wrote before can easily be rewritten as a YML tag. And instead of having the entire apps@yahoo.com/foo, I would just put the relative path to wherever I want relative to what I put in the application editor. So in this case, the GUID would be the kind of a convention in social applications in Yahoo is that all Yahoo users have a identifier. It's called a GUID, globally unique ID. And if you take advantage of YAP's social APIs, then that's what you're going to be getting back for let's say, a person's friend list. So something that's actually going to be really useful when making highly engaging small views is taking advantage of this replace parameter, or attribute rather, on the YML tag. So if this was in my small view and I actually put a replace equals foo in here, what would happen is instead of me navigating to a new page, maybe it's still in the same context, but I'm actually navigating to a new page, I would actually take the content from my server at fight.php and place it into the foo div or foo, any element with the ID of foo on the page. So that's really useful for, and that's something that Mint, the Mint app that you saw earlier uses to whenever you click on, say, my spending, it's actually a YML with a replace. That will replace the content of the empty div where say the spending information is supposed to go, and kind of pull in that content from the server. So that's something that you might want to take advantage of to kind of provide that kind of overview idea into your small view. And an even better way to make this attack them, you can actually, now that you have the GUID for some social data, this kind of shows kind of how YML can be used as a really great shortcut for putting in social information. So in this case, if my friend was female, then it would say attack her or maybe attack him by using the objective attribute set to true. So expanding on the replace attribute that I was talking about before, you can actually, you could think of YML is for clicking on something, while YML include happens automatically. So in this case, say if this is my complete small view, I have this default content that I place in a div with the ID of content that's just a loading message, say. Whenever you have a YML include on your page, it'll actually act as a YML and retrieve the content, in this case at smallview.php, and place that into and replace the content that's in my div ID content above. So in this way, you can actually have customized per user content without, say, using our set small view API to customize the small view. Instead, you can actually have the default small view be this code behind me and customize small views in that way. The idea here, though, is if you this is sanitized before we insert it, so you can't just include script blocks and expect that to work like you would in your full view if you visited apps.yahoo.com link with smallview.php. But it is great for including some kind of content into your app and pulling that in from the server, and not have to worry about constantly pushing it out to us by customizing the small view. Continuing on YML's ability to handle social data, this is a easy way to get a picture and the person's first name, or the connection's short name, easily inside your application. There's also a YML name tag that just get the name bit, and a YML profile-pic that allows you to get just the picture bit. And another thing that's going to be more useful later when I'm talking about working with the Caja environment or a cajoled environment, you'll want to avoid using CSS hacks, and this is a great way to do it. If you're a big fan of conditional comments, this is kind of in a similar vein, but for YAP apps. What's kind of nice about using this instead of using a CSS hack like an underscore is actually the content inside of a YML if env tag will not be displayed to anything in this case except for Internet Explorer browsers. So it's kind of nice because you can actually, if you have you could have anything. This could be some JavaScript. This could be some CSS that you only want to have on delivered to IE. And for anyone else, this actually won't even get sent to be cajoled, and actually can make your app faster if you have a lot of stuff that needs to be processed by our Caja system and by the YAP engine. And more about all these tags can be found on the YAP documentation on YDN, and there's the link to it. And I'll have that up again later in the presentation for you to look at. So while you're in the Open App Editor, I'd recommend that you create two apps. So the one that you have just now is great for development. You can actually, we provide the way a notion on the app editor to have a development version of your app and a live version of your app. However, once you push it live, it doesn't actually go public in any kind of gallery. We actually just give you a public URL that you can think of it as a secret shared URL that you can actually give to your friends or other developers working on your project and install on, say, the Yahoo homepage or on My Yahoo, and not necessarily have to have in any kind of gallery. What's nice about this is you can actually test changes to see how some specific functionality like changing the yahoo.com gallery icon URL, how that looks for users. If you use our social APIs, you can actually change the scopes of your app, and you can actually see how that will look for your users, because we need to prompt users for changing scopes and changing what social data they've agreed to share on behalf of you, the developer. So you'll want to actually. What's really great is that if you change that and you don't on production, you don't actually know how that's going to look like. That can possibly be jarring. It has been for some developers. So creating two apps, one for development, one on production, has worked really great for a lot of our developers, and it's something that we'd recommend that you do because it's just so easy. So kind of segging out of creating an app into actually building your app. So we allow you to use rich JavaScript inside of your app using libraries like YUI. The only other, I think MySpace has to do the same, but there's an approval process, and Facebook doesn't quite have the same kind of thing. They have their own kind of system for securing JavaScript, but it doesn't quite yet allow the kind of integration, kind of support, the native support that we do. So you may be asking, what's the approval process? If MySpace has one that's 72 hours, then what do we have? Well, like I said before, there isn't one. Your app is live immediately. There's no application review. It's immediately available live, and you could share your app URL with other developers right away. But obviously, things can go wrong when just allowing any kind of JavaScript to run on our Yahoo.com domain without us checking it ever. Obviously, some of these concerns can include with setting just any kind of JavaScript, like we have to be concerned with people navigating away out of the app. So your app is already within an iframe, and for some application containers, that's enough for them. For us, we're concerned about someone visiting an application. Maybe they're given a link that they see on Yahoo.com. They navigate to that, and just JavaScript sets the top.location to another URL that downloads, say, malware. That's something we obviously don't want. Another thing we don't want is people sniffing browser history. And this is kind of an interesting one. So actually, a malicious application can include tens of thousands of links, say, to popular internet destinations, and set the a visited CSS for these links to a known value. by checking the computed style of these A-links, you can actually determine someone's browser history if you include enough links to top internet destinations. And that's obviously something we don't want to share with people. Cookie and token stealing, obviously, access to document.cookie and access to anything, any DOM element on the page could cause problems with accessing our tokens that YAP uses to make these social data requests by, say, YML or in open social. Script injection is another problem. This is kind of a problem more so for IE than other browsers. But in, say, Internet Explorer, you can include a script tag, and whenever you write that out to the page with something, say, like a pin child, that script can actually, I think with the defer attribute, it will be executed after you include it on the page. So this kind of script injection is not only a problem for just people, developers with bad content, but also for malicious users. Another problem is, say, host discovery. If you include an iframe on your page to something that would only resolve on a LAN, like, say, the hostname print, you can actually kind of even determine, if you're clever enough, whether a user is coming from a certain environment or certain network environment or a certain place if you know enough about the network. And another thing is XHRs. We don't want people being allowed, say, to make any network request on Yahoo.com, maybe to our own proxies or maybe to our own endpoints on the YAP side of things. But we still want them to make web requests to their own server. We still want things to be useful and still want to have these kinds of interesting applications. But we want to not only protect, basically we not only want to protect our users from malicious developers, but also malicious users that then take advantage of insecure apps. Because really, not only, I mean, really, I want you guys to understand that we're not only concerned about just malicious, bad intentions on the developer's part of things. As we've seen with more kind of recently with Facebook, they actually had some developers that actually meant really well, but had their computers infected with spyware, and it actually changed app content that without their knowledge, it actually was modifying their own Facebook application with actually hidden iframes and a whole bunch of other nasty stuff. So there's a lot of concerns here, and when people visit Yahoo, we take that kind of trust that people put in us very seriously. So that we found the answer to kind of creating really rich applications, stuff that's interesting, while still making it safe and not having to be inundated with review requests in Caja. So Caja started out as a Google project, and it's through the hard work of Google engineers and a lot of people on YUI and the YAP team to kind of bring this together and make JavaScript support well enough to support YUI. So a little bit of background about if you're new to Caja, it's actually a Spanish word, means safe, or box, as like in a bank. The idea being that Caja can safely contain JavaScript programs as well as being a capabilities-based JavaScript. So Caja addresses problems which aren't addressed alone by just simply putting an application inside of an iframe, and does this in a very flexible way. For example, we don't want to just allow anyone to use XML HTTP requests, but we still want to make developers still want to create web requests to their own server. So in this way, for example, in YAP, we allow access to the open social make request functionality while allowing developers to use the open social object that's already provided on the page by us into the Caja sandbox. However, we don't allow, by policy, we don't allow the access to the XML HTTP request inside of the sandbox. So therefore, I think in a really important way, YAP security is really unbiased. We don't have people reviewing apps, and therefore we don't really have the problem of things slipping through the cracks or things sometimes not working, some things that get through, some things that work for some people and some things that don't. If you write something on YAP, it's either going to work or it isn't. And I think we do a pretty good job inside of our development environment to let you know what exactly is going wrong with your JavaScript code, but in our debug messages. So going over how this kind of works, it's really quite simple. So you have some untrusted JavaScript on your website. Excuse me. So we take your JavaScript code, and when we retrieve it for showing your application, it passes through the YAP engine, and the YAP engine will actually run it through the sanitization process provided by Kaha. And the result that you get from that is called cajoled. So the combination of your HTML and your JavaScript and CSS is all kind of made safe for inclusion on Yahoo.com. And kind of disallows the attack vectors that I was talking about previously, while still providing a rich environment that can support complex libraries like YUI. So about YUI, let's get started with actually including YUI in your application. So as far as we've actually supported YUI for longer than just a few weeks ago. Some people have tried inlining the YUI library directly into the applications. However, not everything turned out to be fully functional and working. So that's still the case today. Not everything in YUI 2 is still working inside of a controlled environment. However, a lot of things are working, and these are just some of the things that are working right now. So some of these work better than others. This is all available on the the YAP documentation page on YDN. But you'll actually find that I'll actually show you later that some of these components that aren't on the screen do work just fine, and some of the ones on here work but in a more limited capacity. So it's just something to keep in mind. It's something that we're really working on to enhance even further. So like I said, YAP supports 2.8, and it's an important number for a reason I'm about to get into, and it supports most of it and not all of it. So because there's a reason why I'm going to say right now that you should take advantage of the YUI hosting that that Yahoo provides, and that's because we actually, like I said before, some people have decided to actually provide the host, basically the YUI library or other libraries like jQuery or Prototype themselves and provide that to YAP. The problem is we have to cajole everything at runtime. Whenever we get JavaScript back from you, we have to process it again and again. We don't cache any of the cajoled output from this Kaha sanitization process. So anything that you include on your page with a script src beginning with yui.yahooapis.com/280 is replaced on our side by the YAP engine with a pre-cajoled version. So this actually will speed up your app. If anyone has been using YUI before, switching to this will actually improve and take care of the long amount of time that it takes to cajole something as complicated as YUI. And of course, you can use the same YUI dependency configurator you already are using today. You just need to make sure that 280 is in your URL that you use for that. This is also all on the YAP YUI documentation that I'll throw up on here later. So I'm going to go over briefly working with Kaha. So there's some things that are different about working with JavaScript in a controlled environment that will be useful for you to know when writing YAP applications. So the first thing that's really great about Kaha is you can say hello to standards because it supports a W3C compliant JavaScript API. And this is kind of why JavaScript development before YUI is available wasn't too terrible because Kaha makes up for browser deficiencies. So say if you're adding an event, you can just use, say, add event listener instead of worrying about if a browser supports an IE only method or supports only .onClick. So if you have code and it cajoles and it works on Firefox, it's also going to work with a high likelihood on, say, Internet Explorer. Something that's not so great, though, is that you can't include your own external JavaScript and CSS. So this means that everything that you write has to be inlined in that YAP pulls from your server. I'm going to say inline, basically, instead of including script src like you could with YUI, everything that you include has to be provided in full on the output that YAP will see and proxy through to the YAP engine. So if you are using something like, say, you have a web application that does the right thing and puts these JavaScript resources and CSS resources on your in separate modules, you'll want to include either one or two things. You can actually either include it like this, where you just have the entire content just dumped in just for YAP, or you could actually be lazy. This is a problem that irritated me long before YUI was available. You can go to this GitHub project I wrote. It's really simple. It was originally designed to handle open, the gadget specification before YAP was able to do so itself. The open social gadget specification. So what this does also, another thing it's able to do is actually pull out, it's kind of really simple, the code's kind of behind here. It just takes out anything it finds using a really nasty regex for script src and link href that looks like it's a style sheet, and will fetch that using curl. I'm sorry, yes?
I'm on the Kaha team, and I was just wondering why inlining of CSS and JavaScript.
Right, because it's able to in Kaha. Right.
So Kaha, we had a bug where add import for CSS wasn't working. So if you had a style
yes.
and you said add import,
so you're absolutely correct. That is not a problem. That is not a limitation of Kaha itself or the Kaha project. That's more of we haven't found a good way to say cache the output from the cajoling process on Yahoo's infrastructure.
Who should I work with on that?
Felix.
Felix.
Yes, and I'll get more into that, but. So right now, yeah, that's something that we are really wanting to get. We know that that's a real pain point for developers to kind of have this, and it's a really big irritation. But if you could either choose to work around it for now, or to you can actually continue to develop using this kind of modular script pattern and use. Say Ungadget to kind of that you have installed on your own server to work around this limitation, and it's something like I just mentioned that we're very interested in working on for a future YAP release. Like I mentioned before, history sniffing is something that we are wanting to disallow. So in order to do this, we don't allow access to computed styles, for the reasons that I mentioned already. Another thing to be concerned about, may not be a problem for you, is scripts always ran after your markup. So if you have anything like this, a script tag, and then another script tag at the end of it, everything's going to move down to after your all the markup in your application. So it's just something to keep in mind while, say, if you have stuff that's sensitive with DOM manipulation, for example. This may not behave as you expect with Kaha. I'm sorry. So most of the time, if you're using, say, a legacy method of attaching event handlers, which you probably aren't because you're using YUI now, this may not probably is going to refer to the global window object instead of the context in which you're attaching a event handler. There's just something to keep in mind if you're trying to use some older JavaScript code or some legacy library that you're trying to inline and give to YAP. It may not behave as you expect. So I mentioned top.location, but document.location also pretty much is also not allowed because we don't want, say, not only taking the top frame or the page itself that your application is hosted in, but also the inner frame to actually redirect to, say, maybe a fake Yahoo login page. So we don't want you navigating out of this kind of cajoled context. So you can't just go and take the frame into any page you'd like. If you're trying to navigate to a new page, I'd recommend that you use YML for that purpose, the YML-A tag. So you already know, if you ever listen to Crockford, you shouldn't be using width. And width likely will not work for you in Kaha. So I know you're already not using it, so it shouldn't be a problem. And if you don't know what it is, then don't ask. It's not something you want to use. There's also no document.write. It's not generally a good idea either. If you're trying to do something like document.write, you can use... yes, I'm sorry.
Document.write is supported in the current trunk of Kaha, and so when Yahoo rolls out the next version of Kaha, they should have document.write.
Okay, great.
It does
So I actually saw that getting pulled in like 2 days ago to us. I was going to mention that, yes, so right now document.write doesn't work, but and it's probably not something that you guys are using, or it's not really something that that a lot of people still use nowadays. But so right now we don't have support for it as, but that's not a limitation again of Kaha. That's more of we're currently on a older. It was Kaha's fault before. And now it's our fault because we don't have the latest Kaha. But I've actually saw that we will likely have this in the next YAP release. But you probably aren't using that anyway. So CSS hacks, and this is another thing that I know Kaha has worked hard to get more support for. And in particular, a lot of the YUI CSS Foundation required supporting CSS hacks. In order for things to work properly. You'll still get some warnings from time to time, and this may or may not be the fault of Kaha, but again, we provide a lot of verbose warnings for malformed script and malformed markup or invalid attributes on HTML tags. But it's something you want to avoid because it may not work as you expect, especially if they're the more really hacky CSS hacks. So again, like I mentioned before, YML is great for this. And so if you're used to conditional comments, you can just say, in this case, I'm using the underscore hack to just target IE. And I can easily rewrite this to just include, say, the same kind of thing, and without using CSS hacks by using FENV, which is also great because we don't have to punish non-Internet Explorer browsers with the extra overhead of cajoling and then delivering cajoled CSS, or because YML if ENV can be used anywhere in your application. This also works for. This could also work for, say, a script that's you want to have only on Internet Explorer or only for Firefox. Yes?
How do you target Internet Explorer 6 but not 7 or 8?
So you want to look at the YML documentation. I don't believe off the top of my head that we go to that fine-grained of control. We do? We have IE6 and 7, I think, as UA types, or version, actually, the version attribute. So yeah, you'll want to look at the YML documentation and use the version attribute, say, so higher than, say, 6 or lower than 7 or something like that. Another thing, while I'm on the subject of FENV, it isn't just UA and version. We also have, say, A grade, true or false. So you can actually, that's kept in sync with the current graded browser support from Yahoo. So if you're wanting to only target, say, functionality that works on A grade browsers, or not necessarily, then you could use YML FENV for that purpose. So if that's something you're kind of interested in, instead of using, say, hacks or maybe even using that in JavaScript, you might want to look into just using this so that you don't have, you can actually squeeze that much more performance by not having the YAP engine cajole code or resources that you're not going to be using. So if you decide to use Flash in your app, we do support that, but we don't support it from, say, from JavaScript. If you want to use that, we have a tag for doing this called YML Swift. The reason for this is really because we'd like to keep people from accessing JavaScript. Let's say they allow script access attribute on a Flash movie. Instead, what we do is we actually provide a proxy that has this proxy that we write, that we put on the page, that has script access. And you can actually, we have a Flash SDK on the YDN website that you can look at if that's something that interests you, where you can actually, if you use this SDK, it actually connects to our Flash proxy, and that has script access on the page to do social interactions, like, say, opening up a message panel or getting social data from your friends. So if you're interested in that, that's something you'll want to check out on the YML documentation as well, instead of using, say, Swift object or going your own route with JavaScript or a markup-based approach. Another thing that you want to keep in mind about YAP is, for various reasons, we cache images. The most important one, I believe, is, say, if you're, we allow any application to have a its own icon, right? So if you are looking at, say, a list of your installed applications, or if you're searching for applications and you have a whole list of them, basically that means that we're getting, say, 20 images from 20 different domains, which can slow down the performance of our own websites for purposes of showing a list of applications. So basically we take all the images that you give us and we'll rewrite them into images that are hosted on Yahoo's infrastructure. So this is great for you because we kind of host a lot of your application, or all of your images that you use in your application for you. You'll want to, it's something you can take advantage of, but one thing you do need to keep in mind is whenever you change your images in your application, sometimes they can be stale. Usually it works, but when it doesn't, the best remedy is to just change the URL of the images you're using. So if you're creating an application for the first time, having versioned resources is a great way to get around this kind of problem. Being able to version your image resources as they as you do a push or deploy on your server can kind of work around any problems that you may have with stale images. So finally, I'm going to work on and show you some examples of YUI and YML on running on YAP. So this is a GitHub project I set up a few days ago, and it's very terse. It only has a few examples. We also have some examples on YDN I'm going to show you next. But I wanted to go over actually including a very simple YUI component on your page. So the first one is that I'm going to show you is something that I didn't have on the slide showing you what we officially support, but it actually works great, and something you, as a developer, you might be interested in is Logger. So you actually see here that we have all the JavaScript resources that we got from the YUI configurator. In this case, I didn't combo handle my JavaScript, but we do support that as well. If you have a combo handled JavaScript resources, you just need to make sure that when you get it out of the configurator, it's probably going to say 2.8.0 R4, but our rewriter only rewrites resources that start with the 2.8.0 prefix strictly. So if you use R4, basically if you go to the configurator today and try to get script and CSS back, and you just copy and paste that into your app, it may not work for you. So if that ever happens to you, just make sure that you're using 2.8.0, because any other version of YUI doesn't have a pre-controlled version for you, and it won't work, just like it won't work for any other external JavaScript or CSS. But you can see here as well, we also allow you to use any CSS also, not just JavaScript, but CSS, external CSS that starts with the yui.yahoo.apis.com prefix also works fine. Something I want to call out, though, is when you're including CSS like this, you'll notice that these YAP applications that I'm going to show you that you're going to write are intended to be HTML fragments. So you can actually think of you're writing some markup that's going to be placed into a page that has a body already. So you don't actually put a doc type or a head or provide a title or anything like that. These are just HTML fragments. And in this case, you don't have access to change the body. You could do so with in JavaScript by setting document.body and adding a class name to that using YUI. But in this case, I found it just easier to put a div with the class of YUI-skin.sam, which is required to apply the default skin for the logger widget. And then instead of just creating a new widget log reader without any attributes or without any arguments, rather, I go ahead and specify logger, meaning that I want to attach this log reader or place it into an element with the ID of logger, and I provide that inside of another containing element that has the class of YUI-skin.sam. So whenever you're using, say, like the container family of YUI components, you want to make sure that you watch out for these kind of CSS problems that you might have. And Logger works just as you'd expect, too. Everything just, it looks great. So I want to briefly go over some things when you're working with, say, dialogues as well. So one thing is that you have to watch out for if you're using, say, choose to use the YUI CSS Foundation. YUI CSS Foundation, if you include, say, fonts.css to reset fonts, you'll notice that you're going to get a warning inside of the Open App Editor when you preview your app that it's trying, it ignored a rule that was trying to apply to the body because there is no body in your application, and you can't create one. So in this case, what I did is I just copied the declaration from fonts-min.css and applied it here. As you can see here, I have a ID app, and so basically that my default, my reset that I wanted, which is to provide a sans serif font instead of a serif font that's the browser default, gets applied and makes everything look like as you'd expect. So that's just one minor detail that you'd want to keep in mind, yeah. And that's applied to also with the class of YUIConf that contains everything that will use a dialog inside of here. So that's not the only examples so the examples that I have on GitHub are pretty terse. However, we also have some YUI examples available on the Yahoo Developer Network page for you to explore as well. That's the link that goes directly to the YUI examples that include animation as well as custom events. Those are written by John right here, sitting in this. So thanks, John. And again, all this is everything that you saw today with YML and YUI support is all available on YDN at the link right up there. So finally, you should go out and make some apps. I'd like to see you guys take advantage of the hard work from Google and from YUI and YAP engineers, and actually make some apps that take advantage of YUI and JavaScript. So just to summarize, whenever you're making these apps, to use take advantage of the small and full view, especially if you plan on submitting your app for review into our galleries. We consider we've seen some apps that have only had the default small view and don't focus on that. So we want to make sure that applications, even if your app only works in the full view, at least have some kind of the default view that tells people instructs people and links them into the full view. We covered that there's you have to have hosting for your application, but we actually offer a free accelerator for you to use, and we would highly encourage you to take advantage of that program. We covered YML tags that you'll want to use in your small view to link it to the full view and include dynamic content. That, by the way, YML also works just fine. This is the same way in the full view as it does in the small view. We covered that your JavaScript, HTML, and CSS are cajoled, and we just covered the limitations and differences that you'll find in a cajoled environment. And that if you plan on using YUI, you'll want to use YUI 2.8.0 specifically because that is the only version that is pre-cajoled. Every other version of YUI previously to 2.8 is not pre-cajoled and therefore will not work as you'd expect. You feel free to use it, however, because YUI 2.8 that's included with YAP has no differences from, say, what you would find if you inlined everything with your application. However, for performance reasons, it's strongly advised that you use the pre-cajoled method by using the script tag that you get from the configurator. And finally, that you can't use external scripts for now, and that's something that we are working on.